What's up, you guys? Jason here, Dan, Students of Life. Today, we want to share with you how travel has impacted our lives, leading to richer connections with people and to ourselves because of our travels.
That's right. And in addition, we want to share with you some of our travel hacks that we've used and how we incorporate travel in our daily lives and how you can too.
But before we get into it, if you like what you see here today, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to our channel. So Dan, I wanted to hear a little bit about some of your travel experiences and what travel has meant to you in your life.
Yeah, it really all, to be honest, started off with my parents. They really believed in instilling the value of experiences over things.
Yeah.
And so it started at an early age for us. They made the conscious decision to have less extravagant holidays in place of going on vacations once a year. And through that travel, I really learned about appreciation and gratitude. I'll never forget the time we saw a young boy on the beach, had to be 2 years old, unattended, selling gum in order to buy food for his family for that day.
Wow.
That really puts things into perspective when you're a teenager and you're traveling.
Sure.
We would also go on excursions off the resort, which we'll touch on later.
Yeah.
But we ended up seeing a home where there was multiple families living in one home in about 200 square feet.
Yeah.
So it made my struggles of growing up with 4 people in one bathroom less significant.
That's wild.
What about you? Any stories from your travel experiences?
Yeah. So, I got really lucky. I did not come from a family that traveled. I didn't have a lot of those experiences around me or those types of influences. But when I was probably about 16, I was in my Spanish class. And, frankly, I'd taken Spanish all my life, but it wasn't until like my later years, maybe high school years, where I really kind of dug in. And I was lucky enough to have this one teacher that made a point to work to get our class on a class trip. And I was, fundraising and scraping and begging and borrowing and selling candy bars to raise money. Yeah. But I was able to make this trip happen. And in that experience, I got to go to Madrid, Spain for 2 weekends, essentially. And then got to stay with this family and got to experience a different world, something I'd never seen before. And then on top of that, I was completely immersed in the language. Nobody around me knew how to speak English all that well. I was in this remote city just outside of Madrid for that 1 week that we were there. And frankly, it changed my life. That actually led to the next story, which I'll tell, which was really kind of the next stepping stone for me. If you've ever heard of Tim Ferriss, he's author of The 4-Hour Workweek and a host of other books. He's also got a blog, some of which we can link in the description below. But I could say Tim Ferriss single-handedly sent me to Argentina. Not actually literally buying me the trip, but he planted some seeds in my mind when I was probably in my early 20s. I was working. It was my first job outside of college, and I wasn't happy. And I was thinking back to that trip that I took when I was 16. And I knew that, I might not have been happy in my work, but I knew that there was things out there that I did enjoy. And that trip to Spain was one of the first things that kind of set me on that path. And after coming across Tim's books and a lot of the content he put out, that really encouraged me to take that step, get out of work, go do something that I was passionate about. And, I more or less kind of copied him and what he did, where he went to Argentina. I took 5 weeks, not 6 months, but 5 weeks. I got to go down there, and the experiences and the lifestyle I was able to live there, and for how cheaply I was able to accomplish everything when I put together that trip really kind of changed things for me. And that was just the first step into making travel really a big part of my life without having it to break the bank.
So that brings us to our first topic, how to travel cheaply. And Jason, you have some experience with doing that.
Yeah, so that was like one of the first things I was probably most scared about, right? Travel tends to be, or at least the perception I had, this thing that only rich people could afford to do. And, when I was 24, I didn't have a lot of money. I was just out of school. I was paying down a lot of debts that I'd had from that period in my life. And I didn't really think it was feasible. But having come across a number of different blogs, obviously Tim's books, which I just talked about, really got me to think about it and look at it a lot differently. And so one of the first hurdles that I had to overcome was, how am I going to fly to this place, and how can I do that like realistically or with what little money that I had? And one of the hacks that I've kind of continued even to this day still use is credit card points, and what an amazing instrument that can be. Now, obviously, credit cards are its whole other thing as a financial instrument you need to be responsible with. But the point of this is really just taking out a credit card for the purpose of paying off the balance or doing the minimum spend and then collecting all these points. So for example, you might be able to go and get an American Airlines credit card, might be able to get 60,000 points. With that 60,000 points, you could buy a round trip ticket almost anywhere in the world to pay for your entire flight to wherever you're going. And this is how I travel. This is how I got to Argentina. I continue to do this one. I'm racking up points as we speak so I can plan my next trip to where I don't know yet. But that's kind of the first step that like got me, oh, this made this approachable. This made this affordable. I didn't need a ton of money to actually fly somewhere. So that was kind of the first thing that I figured out that I applied almost immediately.
Yeah. And so the first step is getting there, right? Your flight.
Right.
The second step is where do you stay once you get to a place?
Right.
I've found that you can really find an inexpensive and great place to stay through Airbnb. It's a great way, as we'll touch on later, to live like a local because you're staying in the home of somebody that already lives there. And so looking at that website, Airbnb, doing some research, figuring out which neighborhoods you want to be in and for the right price that fits your budget versus going through a hotel, I've found can really enrich a travel experience simply by being smart about where you stay.
Yeah. I love Airbnb. Airbnb is great. Another way that I've gone about it, and this was great for maybe when I was in my early, even into my like late 20s, but hostels. And I remember when I first got the idea to stay at a hostel, and people back at home thought I was crazy. It's funny though, hostels and travel, or at least the culture of that in the US isn't like it is in other countries. And what I came to learn is that hostels are an amazing outlet to just get out and meet new people. A lot of the times the hostels are, they're typically really well run. They're very safe. And then what they end up doing is they put together a lot of events with other travelers that are there. You have travelers from all over the world. So not only are you meeting people from the country that you're visiting, but you're also meeting people from all across the world.
Which brings us to point number 2, which is travel to see how other people live, get immersed in the culture, and really live like a local. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, really it's like try something new, get out of your comfort zone. Get some good recommendations. I know for me, some of my best memories, actually one off the top of my head was a trip I took to Argentina. Again, that particular trip obviously ingrained some amazing memories in my mind because it was one of the first trips I took. But I was in the hostel, and the person working there essentially recommended a place down the street, and we kind of navigated our way, and we ended up at this amazing restaurant. We sit down to eat, and obviously Argentina, known for their steaks.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe, we sat down, bring out this amazing looking steak, bottle of wine, and I'll never forget this. The waiter comes out, and he literally cuts the steak with a spoon, like no joke, a spoon. And it's the most tender, juiciest, fantastic steak that I ever had. And the whole meal was like $30. I couldn't even believe it. So it's all about getting recommendations. You never know what you're going to stumble across. And, you're going to have some amazing food probably along the way.
Yeah, so it sounds like $15 a night for the hostel, $30 for a world-class meal. You can't beat it.
Can't beat it.
Right. And so another excursion that I had that was life-changing for me, which I would highly recommend you do, is take excursions, get off the resort, ask people what the cool thing to do is in a particular place. My experience was that I went whitewater rafting in Class 5 rapids through a rainforest in Costa Rica. On top of it, we had to take a big SUV with chains on the tires to keep from sliding down the mountain because there was a massive downpour. Wow. So if that wasn't uncomfortable enough, we then had to navigate our way down the mountain on these Class 5 whitewater rapids. The reason why it was so impactful for me is because I did it with my dad, and experiencing something like that with him in a beautiful setting like that, having lunch on a lava rock in the middle of a rainforest was life-changing. And I'll always carry that memory with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So the third topic we kind of wanted to get into was learning the language and how that can really affect, your ability to connect with people and really change your experience. It's going to be kind of the glue that holds a lot of what you're doing there together. One of the first tools I would recommend that I've used on my trips, Duolingo. If you haven't heard of it, we'll link it in the description. But basically the goal of it is that, it'll teach you couple of words, a couple of phrases, depending on how much time you want to invest in it, it'll get you closer to making those connections while you're there. And really, it's going to enrich your entire experience. I can't say enough about trying that out and making sure you're prepared and getting some of the foundations in to kind of smooth over your experience. How has that been for you in some of the trips you've done?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Building rapport with locals oftentimes unlocks those mysterious places and recommendations that they don't just give to anybody that asks them.
Right.
But it also can be a little bit more complex than learning key phrases. I've also downloaded an app called Google Translate.
Sure.
When you find yourself in situations with vendors, for me in particular, I wanted to buy a soccer ball for my nephew that I needed deflated so I could put it in my suitcase. Despite my best efforts on Duolingo for the first 2 months, or for the first couple months of being on there to learn French, I wasn't able to grasp how to say that entire sentence. And so I just put it into Google Translate, show the vendor what I was asking him to do. We ended the interaction with a smile and everything went well just because I did a little bit of homework before I left for the trip.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so even just a couple key phrases, a couple tools that you're in your back pocket that you can use will really make a difference. So the fourth point that we wanted to touch on today is about making time. This isn't going to happen in your life. There's no right time to make travel happen. If it's something that you want to have a part of your life, it's really about being able to make unreasonable requests and actually getting it on the calendar for you to plan for. My story of about how this became such an important thing to me. I was on a flight. I forget. I was traveling somewhere local. I was probably in my early 20s. I used to do consulting. I was on a lot of planes, but I ran into this elderly couple, probably in their 70s or 80s. And I started talking to them on the plane a little bit, and they were telling me how they were, in their retirement, they were going to Antarctica. And like, that was like the highlight of like their time these days. And, I had a nice little conversation with them, but I remember sitting in my seat thinking to myself, like, is this all that I have to look forward to? I'm going to, kill myself over my job, and I'm going to work hard just to retire someday, to look forward to going to Antarctica. That to me didn't make a ton of sense. And so, it was at that point that I decided that I was going to make travel a part of my life, and that I wanted to have these experiences now during some of the best years of my life, and have these experiences, throughout. So I spent a lot of time figuring out how can I make that work? What adjustments did I need to make? And really it was about making that a priority. I don't know. Have you had some experience with that as well?
Absolutely. And you talk about making it a priority. I would also add be intentional and plan ahead.
Right.
And so when you're asking for time off from work and you're going to be away from some family and some friends, perhaps, make sure that you plan ahead of time so that you're prepared to have a conversation about what you're going to do in your absence before, during, and after.
Sure.
And also, what's in it for them? Why should you be going on this trip? Well, oftentimes when I travel, and I know for you too, is you come back a more focused, re-energized version of yourself. And isn't that the best for all parties involved, be it work, friends, and family?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those are some of the key things that we wanted to share with you guys today. We hope that, some of our stories was able to inspire you in how you can make travel a priority and make it so that you can enrich your life, have more experiences, make more connections, and, really put yourself at the next level in your life.
Yeah, and if you'd like what we had to say today, click the link in the description box below so you can stay up to date on the new content that we put out.
That's right. That's all we got. Until next time.